Minister Shai.
Yes, madam. Yes, sir.
I want to tell you that it's a great honor for me to meet you once again. And I don't know if you recall, I was in Israel about 7-8 years ago with a whole group, and I interviewed you. You were a Chaver Knesset then.
I will. I served in the Knesset for 10 years.
All right.
All of them in the opposition.
Quiet, please.
In the opposition. And then I so-called retired in a way, but I'm back. And thank God I became a government minister. I serve as a diaspora affairs minister, and all my concern now is about the relationship between Israel and the Jewish diaspora.
Well, Minister, I know that you feel it, but I want you to know that many, many people feel so proud of the state of Israel that when such a terrible event took place outside of Israel, Israel sent a tzevet, a group of people to help with the rescue, and a minister of Israel came to this country to see on site what is going on. I think this speaks volumes about the concern of Israel for the diaspora. Minister, there's a new government. You're a member of a new government. How is this new government? Tell us.
The new government is a very interesting experience, which hopefully will succeed. Why experience? Because we have never had a coalition made of 8 parties from right, center, center left, and left. This is, in a way, a national unity government.
A United Nations.
A United Nation with a variety of opinions, but we are all united to serve Israel, to serve the people of Israel, and to do the best for our people. And I'm sure that we'll serve for a long time. Some ask me how long you will be there. So I said, don't check your stoppers and watches. We're going to be there for a long time. I know many, of course, personally. I know all the government ministers. They are ambitious to succeed, ready to work hard, and we will. And we will.
Well, I know that for many people, for Israel, security is item number 1.
It is.
And many people say, and you confirm that Iran is the greatest threat to Israel. How is this government going to...
The government of Israel,
yes,
this one as well as the outgoing one, will say the following. All the options are on the table. If Iran behaves according to the agreement, the past agreements, according to the international law, it's fine. If Iran violates the international law, if Iran try to ignore past agreements and hopefully the one that will going to be signed soon, Israel maintain the freedom of operation to defend himself. This is defend itself. This is something that no one will take Israel. It's a sovereign state, and we'll do everything we can to defend ourselves against all enemies, including a potential nuclear Iran.
We have seen a rise of anti-Semitism these last few years, and even in the United States, one feels that it's not exactly the same as before. Is Israel ready always to open its doors for anybody who feels insecure?
Eretz Israel is the home of all Jews from all over the world, if they choose to come and to find safe haven there. I'm not suggesting they are coming tomorrow. Each of the 8 million Jews living out of the country, Israel is waiting. The doors are open, and Israel is waiting for them.
You know, I once heard a definition of home that remained with me. Home is the place where they can never refuse you entry. And maybe this is a very good, with this chok hashvut, no?
I like this definition.
They can't refuse you entry.
The chok hashvut says that every Jew is entitled to come and settle and reside in Israel. Every Jew.
You know, as of late, there were certain accords called the Abraham Accords between Israel and some of the Arab countries. You think that has a future? It shows also that the Palestinian issue, while it's still there, is not necessarily the most important.
Signed the Abraham Accords, and then followed by another 3 Arab states, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. Each one, some of them already moved forward, some of them moved halfway to establish diplomatic relations with Israel. Is the Palestinian issue or conflict still around? Yes, it is. Should Israel engage with the Palestinians on the solution for this conflict? The answer is yes. Not every member of the coalition agrees with me. Okay, we're going to discuss it between us. We are not going to break the coalition for that matter. Especially when we don't know if there is a partner on the other side. I'm not sure that Abu Mazen, who is not too young, unfortunately, in his age is ready to make a certain compromise or to make courageous decisions. There is a stage in your life that you say, okay, let's keep everything running without doing something outstanding. But there's no doubt about that, at least in my view, that we should sit down with the Palestinians around the table and figure out what's the future of the relationship between Jews and Arabs and Israelis and Palestinians.
Many people were disappointed by the behavior of some Palestinian Israelis, in other words, Arab Israelis, that these last few weeks behaved in a manner that we thought they shouldn't behave. They're citizens of Israel with full. Does an Arab have full rights in Israel?
Arabs have full rights in Israel, but still many of them are frustrated and bitter. And let me tell you, Rabbi, it's our responsibility to do more for the Israeli Arabs. And that's why I'm extremely happy and pleased to have, for the first time in Israel history, an Arab party in the Israeli coalition government, which means that they are ready to go forward and to be fully or at least partly integrated into the political system. It's one step forward, it's not all the way. And it doesn't mean that every problem has been solved and now we can live peacefully. There are issues for the Israeli Arabs. We have to work together with them and to solve those issues about housing, about illegal buildings, about opportunities in the work markets, about education, about welfare. Yes, we have to do. But if you ask any Israeli Arab, are you ready to leave Israel and to move into the Palestinian Authority or elsewhere? The answer is no. They love the country, they love the land, and they prefer to be Israelis. So it leaves it for us to work together, and emphasize together with the Israeli Arabs for living together. We have to live together side by side. This is our fate. This is their fate, and this is our fate.
Minister, Hamas wants to obliterate the state of Israel. What is their reaction to a group of Arabs, a political group that suddenly becomes part of a government of Israel that is recognition of the state? What is their relationship, Hamas, with this group that joined your coalition?
Of course, they don't like it because any sign of recognition. But with the Israeli Arabs, there's no doubt. They recognize Israel as a Jewish democratic state. They would like to eliminate Jewish from this definition of Israel. That will never work. Israel is the national home of the Jewish people and will always be. But yes, still it stands on two pillars, Jewish and democratic. It's always been complicated.
You know, Minister, young people today, those that are 75, don't know what it is to live outside of Israel without the existence of the state of Israel. They don't know what it is to be Jewish without a state of Israel.
Okay,
but I am a little bit older, and I do remember what it was as a young man to be Jewish without a state of Israel. You didn't say readily that you were Jewish.
So can you tell me what the Jewish state has changed in your life?
Totally everything. You know, Jew in an English dictionary has terrible meanings, you know. I was a rabbi in New York City, and once the superintendent of our building, who was an Irishman, he told me he had a dealing with someone, he tried to Jew me down. I didn't know what Jew me down means. Finally, he asked somebody, what does Jew me down? And then he realized what he said. That means to bargain you to the bone. A Jew is a coward. A Jew runs away. Suddenly Israel has a tremendous army. And what happened in Uganda many years ago in Entebbe, look at what Israel did to save Jews. They weren't Israelis, they were Jews. That is a tremendous difference. And I'm afraid that many American Jews, and Jews from other places also, don't appreciate the historic significance of Israel because they were born already into a state when there is a state of Israel. How is it possible they call Israel an apartheid country? Apartheid
Israel is not an apartheid state. And this is something I cannot even tolerate, blaming Israel to be an apartheid state. I've been to South Africa during the apartheid, after the apartheid. I've learned a lot about it. There's nothing to compare. Even Arabs who live in the territories in Judea and Samaria are not related or not treated by Israelis like South Africa during the apartheid period. Nothing to compare with. Those are areas are still in disputed. One day the dispute, as I said before, will be resolved, but they enjoy the rights, and it's again nothing to compare. I wish we'll get to the point that, as I said before, something a political solution will be found. And of course, in Israel itself, no one claims there's something close to apartheid, but this is a way to color Israel in certain color, to portray Israel as an apartheid. It's very easy because everyone knows what apartheid is. And by the way, Black Lives Matter has nothing to do with Israel too. Some Americans try to compare between the Palestinians, but nothing, because I've never heard about any member of the Black Lives Matter claiming Minnesota as an independent state, claiming the state of Minnesota. This is a conflict between two nations, and it's not a social conflict in Israel. Taking the social conflict, making the political one or a national one, that's a distorted way to present the conflict.
Minister, you know, many people admire Israel, startup nation.
It is.
You know, I have been to Israel, as you well know, and admire the progress, enormous progress, cultural, in every sense, you know, army, every sense. But they say that Israel is very weak in one item. You know which one? Public relations. Why don't we get a different image that of Israel and the rest of the world? But maybe it is also because many people don't want it. You know, it's not that Israel isn't doing enough, but maybe Israel should do a little bit more through the press, through the media, different, to show what Israel really is.
I'm laughing because I've spent maybe 40 years just on figuring out what is the best way for Israel to handle its public diplomacy. So first of all, I recommend the audience to read my book.
What is the name of the book?
It's in Israel. In Hebrew, it's called Milchamedia. Milchamedia, which means Milchama and Media.
Right.
And in English, it's Hearts and Minds: Israel's Battle for Public Diplomacy.
Can one get it on Amazon?
Yes. And,
okay, so we look up Nachman Shai and we'll
Hearts
find
and
it.
Minds.
And
It's not an expensive book. Why do I say that? Because I fully agree with you. And I was extremely disappointed only recently with the major military campaign in Gaza, Guardians of War, when Israel failed again. And I'm telling you, Rabbi, we did everything possible, every effort. And I don't think there's any other single state on earth that has tried so much not to hurt, not to kill any civilian, as much as we could, because it's so complicated that they purposely position themselves within highly populated areas. They defend themselves, they surround themselves with women and children. So we did really our best. And unfortunately, 67 children were killed during this operation. But that story hasn't been told, and many others. Israel is, and I'm very extremely frustrated because I wasn't around at the time, but it's not only about me. There are a line of experts that will tell you the same story. When it comes to a war, today's war, which are low intensity ones, which are asymmetric, you have to invest a lot in public diplomacy. It's not a side effort, it's the central effort. Because if you are not trying, and if you do not try to acquire sympathetic position by the world public opinion, by foreign audiences, you lose the war. The winning a war is on hearts and minds. It's no longer a physical victory. It's not a matter of territories. We can take Gaza tomorrow morning. We don't want to.
Well, Minister, I would say that your presence here today, and this occasion, is part of that effort, of presenting
Absolutely.
the true face of Israel. I want to congratulate you, Minister, and I want to thank you very much for this opportunity and wish you and the government success, because your success is going to be the success not only of the people in Israel, of the entire Jewish people, and I think of also every peace-loving person on the earth. Your success will be our success. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Just say two words.
Yes.
Be'ezrat Hashem.
Okay, God bless you.
Thank you.